In an emergency, sometimes an ambulance isn't the fastest way to get a patient to the hospital. There's traffic, and rural areas may be hard to reach. A helicopter would be faster. PHI Air Medical is a helicopter air ambulance company here in Santa Fe. Lead pilot Ed McDonald describes the situation in which he might get called.
One of the kinds of calls we'll get is that I remember last year we flew up somewhere up in the Jemez Mountains, kind of near the Caldera, and a lady was riding a horse, and apparently a rattlesnake had spooked the horse. She fell off, and she had a probably broken shoulder blade and probable neck injury as well. She was stabilized by the Forest Service people who happened to be in the area, and they cleared a landing zone for us. We were probably up there in about 15 to 18 minutes, picked her up, loaded her on board. The crew did their medical procedures, and we flew her to, I believe in that case, to UNM.
The Santa Fe crew of PHI Air Medical receives about 20 to 50 calls a month.
Basically, the helicopter response time is about 7 minutes to get off the ground. So we're basically 911 service. We're not on call from home or anything like that. We're actually right there at the airport within, 50 feet of the aircraft.
Sometimes the helicopter has to land in remote areas.
Generally, we are called for what we call a scene call by a local EMS service or state police or county sheriffs or whomever in the public service arena, and they will set up a landing zone for the helicopter. It could be right on Interstate 25 or Interstate 40, or it could be at a park nearby or parking lot. It could be almost anywhere. Clearing in the trees. We've landed out in the Jemez Mountains, and they've actually cleared trees so we could get in. So it varies. There's no standard places that we land, but we do train the ground personnel to set up landing zones safely for us, and we are in contact with them as we circle overhead and confirm that it's a safe landing zone. We have very specific criteria, a minimum criteria of what we accept in terms of a landing zone.
The crew consists of a pilot, a flight registered nurse, and a flight paramedic who provide what McDonald describes as advanced life support.
The helicopter ambulance is what we call advanced life support. A lot of communities only have basic life support, which means when a patient is perhaps having a cardiac or a stroke or some other issue or some sort of requires intubation, a basic life support person may not be able to do some of those procedures, wherein an intermediate or a paramedic, and of course our aircraft has a much higher level of capability. So when we get to the scene of an accident, it's basically like we've brought the emergency room to the scene of the accident.
In 2008, nationally, there was a spike in air ambulance accidents. McDonald says most accidents happen at night, and the use of night vision technology greatly helps with their safety.
The NTSB and the FAA have been deeply involved in EMS helicopter safety, mostly because of a couple of real spikes in previous years, particularly 2008, where we had I guess you'd call it a cluster of EMS helicopter accidents. I believe there was like 8 or 9 fatal EMS accidents in that one particular year. The EMS industry has taken quantum steps to improve its safety mitigation processes. PHI has been just, light years ahead of everybody else. We've been doing things for years that the rest of the industry is just starting to catch up with. And one of those things that we have here is if you go back and look at most of the EMS accidents are occurring at night in marginal weather. And what we're seeing is that the EMS crews with the rescuer mentality, which all of us who are in EMS and probably most public service come with a little bit of a rescuer mentality. You know that somebody's hurt out there. You want to get out there and do your best to get there. And that force has pressured some pilots and crews to push into weather and or conditions that were, less than favorable and got themselves in trouble. And PHI 6 years ago began implementing night vision goggles for all of our EMS aircraft across the country, which means that we can see in the dark, which in this particular terrain, With the tall mountains and lots of remote rural area, a lot of darkness, the night vision goggles are a huge, huge safety factor for us.
Ed McDonald, PHI Air Medical. For KSFR News, this is Rachel Kennedy.